Hello everybody, it's Shannon. If you are learning Arabic, you've probably heard of a book called Al-Kitab, a series of books called Al-Kitab fi ادعم العربية, a textbook for learning Arabic. There's part 1, part 2, part 3, and now there's even a 3rd edition. Anyway, I had the privilege to interview one of the co-authors, Ustad Abbas Al-Tonsi, and it was just an amazing conversation. I mean, if you ever wondered, like, how did they come up with the Khaled and Maha story, or did they ever argue about what to put in the books? I mean, all this stuff. So it was just such an honor to be able to talk to him and to learn more about the makings of Al-Kitab and more about his background as a professor of Arabic. All right, guys, so without further ado, Professor Abbas Al-Tonsi. First of all, thank you so much for meeting with me. It means a lot to me. I'm a huge fan of your work, as is probably every Arabic learner around the world.
Thank you.
Well, I was curious when I was, preparing for this conversation. I read that you actually started teaching in Cairo as a professor of Arabic. I'm wondering if you could just tell us a bit about how you transitioned to working with Georgetown and the Al-Kitab and doing the Al-Kitab books.
Okay. Yes. Briefly, I graduated from Arabic language department. And I thought I will be working on literary criticism, not teaching languages. But then when I didn't get any job in Egyptian universities, my professor sent me to American University in Cairo to find me a work so I can live. And it was fun because I thought this is something very easy. Mm-hmm. I am a native speaker. My major is Arabic. So it will be very easy to teach non-native. I realized after 1 week, I really have to study again because the way we see the language is different than the way they can see. I started, I think, 1977 at American University in Cairo. And I left American University at 2007 when they decided to move to New Cairo. I have all memories about American University in Tahrir. So for a very long time. So I thought if I go to desert, I better move to desert with better salary. So, I accepted the job of Georgetown, Qatar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really in this field, I was very lucky because when I started teaching, I didn't know any English. So after just 1 year, I had a very good reputation because I never speak English. They didn't realize that I'm not able to speak English, but because of my Arabic language, teaching only in Arabic, many students praised me and evaluation was great and all of these. Second thing, I was lucky because after the 1973, the oil embargo and all of this, the kind of learners are totally different. They are not those who want to study linguistics or literature. Many come from, they want to study politics, economy, and so on. And I was lucky because this was my normal readings. So I started to teach diplomats, and we had the topics are usually the topics that the language teacher don't know anything about. But I was lucky because I spent most of my life reading in politics, philosophy, economy. So just all of a sudden, I found myself as an important teacher. I went to teach Middlebury. And then in Middlebury, Mahmoud and Kristen and I were assigned to try to solve the problems of a book we call Orange Book.
The Orange Book?
Yeah, by Peter Abboud.
Peter Abboud.
Yeah. So we started trying to fix problems.
Like what kind of problems?
They had, it is very artificial, not authentic. There is no skills. It is like grammar translation oriented. So they assigned us to try to make it communicative.
So this was like in the early 90s, would you say?
Yeah, it was, yeah, like 80, I think 87, 80, starting 86.
You said Middlebury, and you were teaching at were you teaching in Georgetown in Doha at the time, or?
No, I was still in American University in Cairo.
In the American University of Cairo at the time. And how did they find you or reach out to you?
Peter Abboud was the director of Middlebury, and he heard the name, so he came to in his visit to Cairo to meet me, and I went to Middlebury, and I knew Mahmoud and Kristen before.
How did you? And you had already known them? How?
Yeah, Kristen was studying in Casa. I was her teacher in colloquial, Egyptian colloquial.
Ah, so she was studying abroad when she was learning Arabic, or was she?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mahmoud also was working in Casa, Cairo. So we had almost the same ideas about the problems of Orange Books, the way of teaching, the methodology. It must be authentic, all of these ideas. So when we were trying to fix the problems of Orange Book, it just came to our mind why we don't, it is easier to start from scratch instead of trying to fix problems. So we had this idea, submit for a kind of grant from National Endowment for Humanities. We didn't expect to get it, but we got it, and we started the story of Al-Kitab.
Oh, wow. So can you tell me more about, so the Orange Book was what kind of the standard was before people started using Al-Kitab? This book everybody was using was called the Orange Book?
Yes, Orange and Green Book. It was published by Michigan, and Michigan at that time, most of the textbooks in Arabic was from Michigan. And it is a book that was dominating the field for more than 30, 40 years.
Was it only Fusha or for MSA? Like,
yes, only Fusha, yes.
Okay.
And it's written by the authors. It's not authentic text. So the readings, everything are written.
What do you mean everything was written by?
Yeah, all the readings in our book are authentic. I mean, choose the text and keep it as it is.
Right.
Orange Book, the authors wrote the text according to grammar, vocabulary they want to insert. Totally different approach, grammar translation approach, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So at that time, I think that no one of us expected that Al-Kitab will succeed because the three names are very new, young, and in front of a dominating textbook and all the old guards of Arabic in the United States. So we never expected that Al-Kitab, we thought we just wanted, because our friends always used to criticize us that we have unrealistic ideas. So we will make the book only to prove that this can be done.
Right.
Didn't expect it will spread like this. I think the field needed at that time.
Yeah. Well,
needed that shift.
Especially in the early 90s at the time. I mean, so the first edition of Al-Kitab that you guys wrote together, first of all, you're saying it was from a grant. You had applied for an endowment, the three of you. So it wasn't like Georgetown didn't come to you and say, hey, we're going to pay you to do this.
No, but when we started thinking about publishing the book, we tried Georgetown. We never expect that Georgetown University Press will publish our book. We are totally new names, and the other book selling in all universities. So, but at that time they had a very intelligent thing. I think they saw the shift in the field, so they decided to risk. And yeah, it was a big success for us and for Georgetown University Press too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of when you wrote the first edition of the book, it was just the three of you wrote it together in Cairo, and then you submitted it to different universities. I mean, how did it, you like mailed them a draft, or how does that work?
No, we made it mainly for Middlebury.
For Middlebury, okay. So that was the Middlebury College.
And started in Middlebury.
Okay, and you started teaching out of that method.
Yes, and then some other universities wrote to Mahmoud, like they want the material. So we started distributing some of the materials and the videos to other universities to test before publishing.
Okay.
And yeah, when it was published, I mean, it spread automatically.
Wow. And did the first edition, did it have the Egyptian dialect in it as well? Because I know the second edition had Egyptian, as well as
okay. Yeah, we from the beginning we have this approach that we cannot teach modern standard by itself. Mm-hmm. But in first edition we realized that the whole field is against this idea. So there were very little of the dialect. Very little of the dialect.
Okay.
The second edition, we enriched it to some extent, but we realized that because we put at the end of each lesson, all teachers ignore the dialect. They use the second edition only to teach modern standard. So in the third edition, we decided we will not put it in a separate section in the lesson, but it will be mixed. So it will be difficult for teachers to avoid, because we couldn't understand how someone learns a language if he cannot speak it in any Arabic country.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting, because when I was studying in Dubai, actually, it's where I learned Arabic. And my teacher, who was actually Egyptian, he would skip over the lahga part. He would only do the fusha, and he's okay. We skip the, and it was kind of frustrating because I worked in a Saudi company, and there were a lot of expats from all over, and from speaking Shami dialects, speaking Egyptian, speaking Khaliji dialects, and it was so frustrating because I wouldn't be able to understand what they. Where I was very, I could understand where they're doing, al-akhbar or kid, but I'm like, okay, what are they? And so it wasn't until I learned Saudi dialect, I was able to kind of like get around better. But wow, that's so cool. And with the third edition, which, we actually used the second edition, but the third edition, so you said you also did Shami as well as Egyptian.
Yes.
What made you choose Shami dialect as opposed to like, Khaliji or like Tunsi or Maghrabi or something else?
I think in Maghreb, for example, they made supplementary material with the Maghrebi dialect.
Okay.
We choose first the Egyptian, not because I'm Egyptian, but because the Egyptian dialect is the most comprehensible dialect in the Arab world, because of the movie Kulthum, all of these things. Then we choose the Shami also according to this measure. They understood not only in the Sham area, but they can be understood in Gulf, they can be understood. So we concentrated on these two because they are the most spread dialects.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And were the story of Khaled and Maha, the kind of like that, did that start with the first edition of Al-Kitab, their story
Yes.
and the videos and things? So I want to know,
Yes.
how did you come up with this story, the love story and everything?
It was, okay. The problem with when we had all materials authentic, then how to connect these various scattered texts together. And we thought we need a kind of a line that connect. So I think we did this in 2 or 3 days, writing the story. I mean, because we already had an idea about what we want to do. So we chose Maha, the Egyptian who live in the States, and Khaled is Egyptian who live in Egypt. And in our tradition, nothing prevents that a girl married to her cousin, but in the States, yeah. So we thought this is a nice, and I wrote the story and with Mahmoud and Kristen, and we started, this is like the skeleton of the book. So in each episode, there is a theme. So we choose the authentic material related to that theme. So it unified the whole book. The first edition video was bad because it was totally new field for us. The three of us has no idea about video production or all of these things. So it was not good. But in the second edition, we changed the video. We made a new video, same story, but new actor and more professional video.
Okay, because I only saw the second edition one, and I heard that the Khalid, like the actor, like I heard he's very famous in Egypt. So.
Now, yes, and he was suffering, trying to find work, and it was very fortunate. We were very opportunate to have him with a very low salary to work with for us, because this was like his first video.
First debut, right?
He made. After that, yeah, he has so many films. He's a very famous movie star.
Wow. And then what about also Maha?
Maha, she made some commercials, and then she got married and left the field. But there was a rumor that she died in accident, but this was not true. She's still alive, and but she's just busy with her children and husband.
Wow. Okay. But so the first edition of it, you had just local actors. I mean, before the second edition, you guys did it yourselves with like some people who were local. Exactly. Okay.
Some people like acting in university or something. Whole field. Then the second time we had a more professional director, professional actors, and because we knew how it make a big difference. So the old Maha, I remember the students usually said, when Maha say, I feel lonely and so on.
أحس بالوحدة, she says, or
all the students laughed and said, of course, she deserved to be alone, because they didn't like the old Maha. I mean, as actor, she didn't give any feelings.
Oh, no emotion.
Yeah, so all the students were laughing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And at what point did you know that you were going to make a second edition? So when at what point after making the first edition? I guess it was published in 1995. I read the first edition. So at what point did you know, okay, we're going to do a second edition?
Okay, at that time, I think we thought about after 5 years we should make a second edition, because we didn't exactly follow what we wanted to do. I mean,
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Because of many political considerations in the field, we didn't give enough space for Egyptian dialect in the book.
Okay.
And also, it was our first experience in making a textbook. So we thought that the activities and drills can be more attractive and more communicative. So we had the idea, like, after 5 years, we will make a second edition. And in fact, Georgetown University Press keep pushing us that, okay, we should keep the momentum and continue this opportunity. And so we did the second edition, but it took us longer time to think about the third edition.
What do you, how long did it take before you decided to do a third edition?
I think it was like 7 years. We've done it after 7 years of the second edition.
Okay. And
But
at any
it took
point,
more time in working.
okay. And between you and Kristen and Mahmoud, did you ever have any maybe like arguments about the content of the book?
What many people think why we choose why the three of us decided together. Really, we never had any argument. Most of the time, when someone says something, the other person is thinking of the same thing at the same time. So before starting even the first edition, we were like other people, teachers thought we are saying the same unrealistic principles about teaching. We don't understand how to teach the non-native. So really we had like almost the same brain, the same mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we argue, I mean.
But even like small things, like, I mean, on like, are you sure we should use this poem as opposed to this poem or this song, or, like, in terms of like the stories, you guys all agreed, or did you divide up the work in sense like you're going to be in charge of this, you're in charge of this?
We divided the work at the beginning, but everyone has the right to object. Mm-hmm. But really, just change of ideas. We never spend more than 5 minutes in an issue. This text is useful. Okay, so Mahmoud or Kristen have another text, then we choose. We didn't have all of these sensitivities, like this is the thing I choose, no, at all. Mm-hmm. We're lucky. I mean, we didn't waste.
Yeah, you got along pretty, that's great. I was wondering, when you first started, I mean, when the book came out and it started becoming like widespread, did you have also were other publishing companies, or were they looking for you to write other books for them, or did it kind of, or was it all focused with Georgetown University Press?
In fact, before that, before Kitaab is what made me famous, yes. But before that, I published some other books about Egyptian dialect.
Oh, yeah?
I published a book about Media Arabic. It was the first book with that title, Media Arabic textbook. And after Kitaab, also I published some other Egyptian dialect textbook. And lately, I had a contract with AUC Press to publish a book for Arabic heritage learners. Most of the Arabs who studied in international schools, they are like foreigners, non-native speakers. I mean, they cannot read and write. They can understand, speak the dialect, So when I was teaching in Georgetown, I went to Georgetown, I thought this is very easy because the textbook is Al-Kitab. And I know Al-Kitab, and I know I can remember even which page is this and all of this.
Wow.
But then I found a whole different body of learners, because most of our learners were not foreigners. They were Arabs. But Arabs who cannot read or write, or speak the spoken Fusha too. So I started with other two colleagues, a textbook for heritage learner. I think it will be published by the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
By Press.
So is that with Georgetown University Press as well?
No, American University, because our target learners, most of them in international universities in the Arab world,
okay,
or Arabic universities. So we thought we need a publisher who can easily interact with the region.
Were you teaching students in the US or was through Georgetown in Qatar? Mostly.
Some come from United States, but
okay,
like the number of students, non-native, like say 20 per semester, while the number of Arab students is like 100.
Oh.
So in fact, my work in Georgetown was mainly like teaching what we call heritage learner. And this was the first heritage learner program in Arabic.
And what was the reaction when the first group of students you were teaching with Al-Kitab? Did you notice, like, I mean, in terms of how they were testing as compared to when you used the Orange book before?
Yeah, I noticed really a big difference. Because in the three of us has the idea that you will never learn anything unless you enjoy. And when I was teaching the Orange book and other textbooks, it is like something the students don't enjoy. I don't see any real interaction.
Right.
When we started teaching Al-Kitab, even in the very early days, there was a real interaction and all of the students want to learn more. And sometimes we just say, okay, after 1 week or 2 weeks, we will go into this issue. But so I noticed a real big difference. When I went to Georgetown, what was funny that some of the non-native students didn't recognize me. So I asked them, I thought this is a very good opportunity to ask them what they think about the book.
Oh, yeah.
And they started saying good things, and yeah. And they asked me, do you agree? And I laughed and I said, yes, of course. You can see the names, and I'm one of the authors. Yeah.
You're still teaching Arabic to non-native speakers?
No, and I really retired, but I'm thinking now to return to the field because I thought at the beginning that to retire, this means I have more time to produce material and textbook. Then I realized most of ideas come from the classroom. It's not sitting on a desk and try to think how to. It's most of the ideas comes from classroom. So I will try to find job because I am working now about Islam Arabic, a series of textbook that for Muslims who mainly want to learn Arabic to be able to read Islamic texts. It's not, I don't want to make a religious book, just language. I'm working on it, but very slowly because I don't have classroom to try any ideas.
Try out the ideas.
Yes, because this is the real criteria. I mean, how the text can attract the students.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a teacher, I'm wondering, I mean, when you were teaching non-native speakers, and I know for me, because I also was using Al-Kitab, and I would make some really embarrassing mistakes in Arabic. So embarrassing. And I'm wondering if you have any stories about that with your students, because I mean, I have one, I can tell you, but I'm curious if you have any stories.
Because of age, I don't remember many, but also my attitude, because I had this experience in learning languages like English and French and Russian and that unless you are ready, you are not shy, you ready to make any mistakes without any feeling of shame, you will never learn the language. My approach was not never stop my students when he's talking. Mm-hmm. He is making mistakes. I mean, by the end of his talk, I can just some mistakes, some serious mistake. Mm-hmm. I remember one student, we were talking in Egyptian dialect, things from the book and so on. And some conversation happened like, when I die or something. And one of the students said, Inshallah. And then he realized in that case, we shouldn't say Inshallah. He learned Inshallah, we say in all situations.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought mistakes we enjoyed always.
Exactly. Like I remember, I mean, for me one time, because these are these words that I learned in Al-Kitab. I was trying to say, I was ana mahbata, like I'm mahbata, like frustrated. And ana قلت ana manhata. And I was so embarrassed, but like that kind of thing. But I mean, it's like you don't, like unless you practice it. And also in typing Arabic, and this is the amazing thing is I feel like just nukta صغيرة can make a big difference. Yeah. Like I was typing fakhara, and I typed badal kha, I typed a jim. And I was like, oh, then I looked in Google Translate and I was like, oh my God. And I'm like looking at the book. So it was just like little things like that, but it's what makes it fun because you're just like, it's so like, it's such a beautiful, amazing language.
Yeah, and you remember the both words forever.
Exactly, that's the thing.
The correct one and the wrong one.
Exactly. And I'm wondering also, I mean, since most people who are going to watch this are people who are learning Arabic, and I'm wondering, what's your biggest advice for Arabic learners, kind of biggest takeaways for them?
Don't hesitate to speak, because this is the first thing to, you can master the language. This is the first step. And I remember when Kristen was my student in the classroom, for a whole semester, she never said one sentence. Oh. So I thought she doesn't like the class or something like that. But the second semester, when she started to talk, it was like 5 minutes without stop. And fortunately, at that time, I used to write notes about the classrooms and the students to myself. And I started to study why she made this jump. And I found that she concentrated on listening. So I think this is the two, speaking and listening. Then reading and then writing. The old methods usually concentrate on reading. Mm-hmm. Many scholars who can read difficult texts, but they cannot speak for few minutes in Arabic. Mm-hmm. I think listening is the first skill and speaking. Okay, vocabulary is very important in Arabic because as much vocabulary you know, you can really express yourself. I think you notice that I don't have a lot of vocabulary in English, but anyway, in spoken vocabulary. Because I followed the same method. I learned English by myself for reading.
Ah.
I know vocabulary, I know things, but I never used as active because I never speak English. I was Arabic language teacher, so I didn't need. This is the most, I think, important thing.
Is the listening.
Yes.
And what do you think is the best way for somebody who's, I mean, apart from the Al-Kitab, the audio that comes with Al-Kitab, what kind of things should learners be listening to that they can, you know, find for free online?
Before the internet, I used to say to my students, switch on the TV and leave it and do whatever you want, but keep yourself unconsciously hear Arabic. I think the internet now in YouTube, you have tremendous. So I advise my students, okay, you want to hear about something, okay, write in the search, مثلا صداقة الولد والبنت, friendship between male and female, and just check. You will have many videos and try to see what you can understand, but first you must be interested in the topic.
Yeah.
So choose the topic you want to listen about. You will find many interesting. You will try for 1 minute. If you don't like, you try another thing, and so on. The news broadcast, and is useful, of course, because of the modern standard. But even in some countries now, you can hear the news in dialects.
I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Really appreciate you giving your time today. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole Arabic learning community when I say thank you for your contributions to the field. And we are eagerly awaiting your next book.
Inshallah. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.